Welcome back, everyone, to the final stretch. This is it, the 10th and concluding part of our 2010 Paper Solution series. We're about to tackle the last 10 questions and wrap up our deep dive into this paper. So let's finish strong.
Okay, let's jump right into these final challenges. Nailing these last few questions is often what separates a good score from a great one. So, are you ready?
We're going to start with questions 91 through 95. And our very first question is about a classic microeconomics concept, Giffen goods. Let's break this one down.
This is a great question to kick things off. It really tests our fundamental understanding of Giffen goods, and specifically, one of their most unique characteristics when it comes to demand.
So the key point here is the powerful income effect. For Giffen goods, this effect is so incredibly strong that it completely overpowers the substitution effect. And that's what turns the law of demand completely on its head. When the price of a Giffen good falls, people surprisingly buy less of it.
Now take a look at this graph. This shows the price consumption curve, or PCC, which traces how a consumer's choice changes as the price of a good changes. In this case, for a given good, you can see something pretty unusual. As the price of good X falls, the budget line moves from L1 to L2 and L3, but the consumer actually moves to lower indifference curves, consuming less of good X.
This backward bend is the key takeaway here. It's a direct visual confirmation that as the price of the Giffen good decreases, its consumption also decreases. That's why the correct option says it will bend backwards or tilt towards one of the axes.
Okay, next up we've got a numerical problem. This question is all about the Keynesian multiplier, a topic you're definitely going to see in your exams. Let's see how to tackle this one.
The relationship here is actually super simple and direct. The multiplier is just the reciprocal of the marginal propensity to save. So the higher the tendency to save, the lower the multiplier effect will be, and vice versa.
Following these simple steps makes this totally straightforward. We start with our formula, K equals 1 over MPS. We just substitute the given value, 0.4. A little bit of simple arithmetic, dividing 1 by 0.4 gets us our final answer, 2.5.
All right, next we have a classic question on tax incidence. It's asking who ends up bearing the entire burden of a tax when demand is perfectly inelastic, meaning its elasticity is 0.
The classic example here is something like life-saving medication. Even if the price goes up because of a tax, people still need the exact same amount, so their demand doesn't change. The quantity demanded stays fixed no matter what the price is.
So here's the crucial point. Because the buyer's demand is completely rigid, the seller knows they can just hike up the price by the exact amount of the tax without losing any sales. The buyer has no choice but to absorb the full cost, which means the entire incidence of the tax falls right on them.
Okay, now for a question that tests our knowledge of cost curves. It's asking us which specific curve in economics takes the shape of a rectangular hyperbola.
And this slide illustrates the answer perfectly. This is the average fixed cost, or AFC curve. Just look at how it continuously slopes downward as output increases, getting closer and closer to the axes, but never actually touching them. That specific shape is the rectangular hyperbola.
The reason for this unique shape is purely mathematical. See, average fixed cost is calculated by dividing the total fixed cost, which is a constant number, by the level of output. So when you keep dividing that same fixed number by a growing number of output units, the result just gets smaller and smaller, creating that classic hyperbolic curve.
Here's a question from the history of economic thought, asking about the originator of a really important macroeconomic concept. It's a concept that becomes especially relevant during deep recessions.
And the answer, of course, is the hugely influential British economist John Maynard Keynes. This was a critical part of his critique of classical economics.
A liquidity trap is a fascinating and pretty dangerous situation. What happens is, interest rates are already near 0, so lowering them further doesn't do anything to boost investment. People and businesses expect bad times ahead, so they just hoard cash instead of spending or investing it. And in that scenario, the central bank's biggest tool, monetary policy, becomes powerless.
Great job on that first set. We're halfway through this final part. Now, let's tackle the last 5 questions and really complete our mastery of this 2010 paper.
Let's dig into this question from classical economics.
See, David Ricardo had a very specific idea about why rent exists, and this question is asking us to identify that core reason.
For Ricardo, rent was fundamentally a differential surplus. It arises simply because not all land is of the same quality. The most fertile land gets farmed first. Then, as the population grows, less fertile land has to be used. Rent, then, is the surplus profit earned on the more fertile land compared to the least fertile or marginal land.
This next question comes from the world of public finance. It's about a specific budgeting technique and asks who developed it.
The person we're looking for is Peter A. Peer. The key idea behind ZBB is that you don't just adjust last year's budget. Instead, you start from zero every single time. Every department and every expense has to be justified from the ground up, which is a powerful way to identify and eliminate wasteful spending.
Okay, let's analyze this question from international economics. Devaluation is a major policy tool, and it's absolutely crucial to understand its direct impact on trade.
So, the crucial point is that devaluation has a two-pronged effect. First, it makes foreign goods more expensive for people inside the country, which should cause imports to decrease. At the same time, it makes the country's own goods cheaper for foreigners, which should cause exports to increase. This one-two punch is often used to try and correct a trade deficit.
And just like that, we've solved all 100 questions from the 2010 paper. Wow! Before we wrap up, let's do a quick recap of the key concepts from this final set.
Here's the list of the key terms we covered in this final part. Make sure you're comfortable with all of these because they are incredibly important for your exam.
We really hope this 10-part series has been a huge help in your preparation. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through the 2010 paper. We're rooting for you. All the very best for your exam.